Hello everybody, how's it going? It's Tremoursphere. Thank you all for joining me on this lovely video. It's been a while since we've done a video together, guys. Today I'm going to be doing my owner's review of my MT09. As I promised you guys before, last time I was on the Tiger I said I own an MT09 and this is it. This is my 65 plate MT09 Yamaha. The only notable upgrades that I've made to this particular model are the bar end mirrors, which are just cheapos, which I've managed to waggle on myself, and the Aprokovich MT09 specific titanium exhaust. We're basically, that's all that there is really to say about this bike. I'm going to do a bit of a review for you guys. Since I bought the bike with about 5,000 miles on, I've put on about 2,000 miles, so I've got a pretty good idea of the things that this bike does well and the things that it doesn't do well. And I'm just going to give you guys a basic review of it. But before we do that, I need to go get some petrol. So I thought it'd make a nice, nice cinematic opening if I came to an empty car park, so I hope that came across as well as I thought it might. And that being said, let's start the beast. There is no way in hell this is going to come through on the microphone or the camera or the video as loud as this is. Trust me, this bike's loud. I've taken the baffle out as well because Mama didn't raise no bitch, and it's made to be ridden without it in. It just is. The baffle should not be in if you have an Aprokovich stainless system, titanium system. You just shouldn't have it. It pops, it sounds amazing, I love it. So let's get on to the specifics. I'm going to start probably with the bad things, work towards the good things, give you guys an overall general thought of what I think of the bike, okay? So, let's start off with the thing that everybody talks about the most, and that is the suspension. Is the suspension too soft? Now, there's a double answer to this question, and that's based on what you're going to be using the MT4. If you're going to be using it for road riding a lot and stuff like that, and don't get me wrong, I can ride this bike really hard. I've got some footage from yesterday that I will put up in this video at some point to show you guys how fast you can actually ride it. And I've had a CBR6 and everything like that, and to be honest, if you pushed it, it could keep up with that. There is no doubt that this bike can keep up with the CBR 600. Maybe not quite at top end, but I mean, it tops out at 140 and that's still going some, you know what I mean? And, it wheelies like mental. Like, it's so much fun to wheelie. I've done more wheelies on this bike than ever in my life, I can say that much. It's nuts for doing wheelies. Just little pop-ups here and there. You can carry them if you want it to, but, I mean, it even power wheelies in third gear, which is saying a lot, to be honest. But yeah, the suspension isn't as bad as people make out. In my opinion, for street riding. If you were to take it onto track, now that is a different matter altogether. The reason I think they brought out the MT09 SP was because the suspension was simply, great observations there, mate. I don't think the suspension is good enough for track use. So if you're planning on, my answer would be, if you are taking it on track, either do an all-ins upgrade or buy the SP version. If you plan on doing track riding with it. If you just want to use it for the street like I do and just have some fun on it, then I'd say the stock suspension is fine. Cool, right, we're off. That was easy. That was probably the fastest fill-up I've ever done. I felt like one of them F1 support team guys where they just kind of whip the tyres off in about half a second. I've owned this bike just a little over a year now. Year and a half, something like that. That's how little I've vlogged, guys. And there are multiple reasons for that, which I'm going to get onto before I mention the next negative thing about this bike, before getting onto the positives. So, as a lot of you guys may be aware, if I haven't already told you, I've been having mass camera problems and I've been swapping bikes left, right and centre. I haven't really found what I've really gelled with, should I say. So the main problem before was, if you guys remember, my main camera was a GoPro Hero 4 Silver. Now for some reason that camera has decided to just randomly start freezing and draining the battery even when the camera isn't on. So for that reason alone, I've completely binned the camera off and bought a GoPro Hero 4 Black Edition. So it's an upgrade. The camera is better than the previous one. So now all that's sorted, hopefully, fingers crossed, nothing else goes wrong, vlogs will be more consistent. As you guys know, I did the Tiger vlogs because I was dying to get a video out, and I just put up with that shit camera and all the pain in the ass that it was just to get that video out for you guys. So that's that. Now that's out the way, the second problem with this bike, which is ironic because I've just filled up, is the size of the tank. Now again, these problems I'm talking about are obviously things that people in the MT09 forum have issues with, but these are the most prominent things that I've noticed about this bike that I don't like, or could bother me, should I say. So obviously the suspension is one. The second thing which bugs me more than the suspension is the size of the fuel tank. Now I believe this is a 12 litre tank or a 13, something along those lines. It's not very big, to be honest. It really annoys me when I go on a trip and I end up not even a trip, like I end up filling up twice in one day. You know what I mean? Like twice in one day, just going out on a general day's riding, doing like 100 miles, I'll fill up twice. I did it yesterday. So yeah, that's a bit of a problem for me. The fuel tank isn't amazing. There's not much more I can say about the fuel tank than that. It is just a fuel tank. They could have put a bigger one on if they'd have wanted. They've just chose to go with a really strange configuration for this bike for some reason. Now, the other things that bug me about this bike aren't very big things, and they're things that this bike can't specifically help because of Euro 5 regulations. For example, the tail tidy from factory is horrendous. I need to replace it immediately. I just don't have the money yet because I want to put an R&G one on and put some mini indicators and make it look all real nice and sexy. So that's on the cards. That isn't the bike's fault though. You can do that yourself. It's not a big deal. The mirrors are another one where, again, I just don't like mirrors up here when I can have them down here. These ones are little 7 squid mirrors, but what I've done is, because on the bar ends, I don't think any mirror will quite nip up enough, so get some electrical tape, wrap it round it, cut it with a Stanley knife to make it look all nice and pretty, and then put them on, and they don't move, and they're really good. For £7, I can't complain. They've got a blue tint on that stops them having glare and stuff, so yeah, that's really good. Loads of people are like, oh, the throttle's too snatchy. It's unrideable. I can't ride it. Of course you can. You just have to be nimble with it. That's what they mean by snatchy. But if you are consistent and soft with your throttle where you need to be, there's no problem with it. The torque on this thing is absolutely ridiculous. It's the torquiest bike. It's the torquiest bike I've ever ridden. Like, it throws the Tuono out the water, and again, I don't know if that's because the suspension is a bit softer, that causes it to feel a bit more sporadic and aggressive, but it feels crazy. It feels like you're riding a rocket ship. Like, one minute you're like, alright, I'm just going normal, and then it's like taking off. See what I mean? It's just nuts. So, as you guys can tell, I've been having a lot of fun on this bike. Now, let's get on to the positives. Obviously, we're going to loop the fact that I just mentioned the torque. The torque on this bike is what makes it so amazing. A 900cc triple is just unbelievably torquey and fast. This bike has a limiter on it at 140 miles an hour, which if you get an ECU flashed, I've been told the bike can do up to 172 miles an hour, which is staggering. But the thing is, if you're going to put an ECU flash on this bike, you have to put a suspension upgrade on it. I've got used to it now, but when you go into turns and that, you just have to learn to trust that the suspension's going to have a bit of travel with the forks, and you just have to ignore that and carry on focusing on your lines. So there's that. But the torque is insane, and the fact that you can get an ECU flash to turn it into a completely different bike is amazing. That if you want to sort the throttle out and you really hate the throttle on the old gen models, the new gen models with the Bugs Life praying mantis headlights, they've sorted all that out, so that's not really a big issue. But on these ones, if you really hate the snatchy throttle and you like the look of them like I do, just get it ECU flashed or remapped, and it'll sort all your gearing out and make everything nice and smooth and make your fuel economy really good at the same time. So for that reason, snatchy throttle I can't put down as a negative, because you can get it fixed. The stuff I'm putting down as negatives is stuff that you can't fix really in a real world thing, like unless you had a custom tank made or something, or you know, you want to pay £500 to £1,000 for a suspension upgrade plus fitting. You know, those are things that in my eyes, you can't really change. But you know, to get this bike ECU flashed and everything might be 300 quid. So, you know, the suspension, I suppose, you could also not class as bad either, because you can get it sorted. So I don't know, it's however you guys want to look at it, but in my spectrum of things, I'd say the suspension's a bit shit, tank's a bit shit, throttle, I actually like it, so I can't put it down as a negative thing. I just can't. So there's that. So once I navigate around this corner a moment, so the next thing that I would like to, the modal system, as I was saying before. Now, I've ridden a lot of new bikes, I've tested a lot of new bikes, and a lot of the modal systems seem to be overcomplicated for no reason whatsoever. Maybe for your own safety, but if you're a competent rider, they're more of a chore than anything else. So, the thing I love about this bike, firstly, with the modal system is how easy it is to change the mode. There's the mode button. I'm going to back off the throttle and change it into A mode, and it's done. That's it, I'm in A mode. Now, way more aggressive, way snatchier throttle, like that. If you could see that on the camera, how fast I jerked forward there. And then I'm going to put it in B mode now, which I've just changed it to B mode by backing off the throttle and pressing the mode button. Don't get me wrong, it's still fast, but if I can put it into a way that you'll all understand just from watching this video, it's like taking a 900 engine and just knocking 300cc off of it. It just takes all the bite out of the throttle. If you were going into here and you really wanted to slam the throttle on, you know, you'd probably skid the back end out if you did that in standard or A mode, but in B mode you might get away with it. So B mode has its uses. In a general census of what people use B mode for, they use it for if it's been wet on the road, if it's raining, stuff like that, where you don't want torque and throttle to be snatchy, because it will cause you to fishtail and have tank slappers and all that stuff. So that is the modal system. Obviously, if you can afford an Aprokovich exhaust or any other sort of exhaust that takes your fancy, I'd highly recommend the Aprokovich titanium system, full system. I got it with the bike because I don't like buying exhausts after I've just shelled out loads of money for a bike. I prefer it to come with it if I can, and this one did, so that's really good. I think this bike from factory should really come with a steering damper, because the not very expensive. I mean, the ones that the MT09 forum lovers people seem to recommend is the Chinese ones, which I bet you've never heard me say that in my life before, and you probably never will again. But apparently the Chinese ones are really good for the money, so they could have just put a cheap £60 to £70 steering dampener on to stop you having tank slappers when your wheel comes down at 100 mile an hour, or you know, whether you're going fast and you just, you know how tank slappers occur. You know how tank slappers occur. You know, it's a common thing. And to be honest, I think this bike could really benefit from one, and I know a lot of people make it a mandatory mod that you must have as one of the first ones they have for their MT09s. It's certainly on my list with the tail tidy, and when I say there isn't really a lot on the negatives or the positives, just because it's a very well-rounded bike, you know, for that reason there isn't really that much more to say about it, to be honest. It's just a very well-rounded bike. It's very fun. I went for the street rally mainly because I like the additional fairings on the front here, which the regular MT doesn't come with, and on top of that I believe it has a more cushioned seat on the street rally. However, I may be incorrect about that. I just remember when I test rode one of the new MT09s, the newer gen with the Bugs Life headlight, that had a less comfortable seat, so I just assumed that the street rally must have, you know, a better seat. I rode for nearly 7 hours on this bike yesterday, hardly without a break, with a pillion, and I was quite sore at the end of the day, but I mean, for a full day's riding, thrashing a bike about, that's pretty good going. On my Honda CBR 600 RR, I would have been lucky to go 3 hours without being in mass discomfort. So for that reason, it's not that bad. As for wheelies and things like that, this bike tends to come up very hard in first. Oh, this is all purely off throttle, this is not including a clutch up. It comes up very hard in first gear, comes up still very hard in second gear, although you need to give the throttle just a teeny weeny bit of a jerk. But I'm not talking like roll on, slam on, because you will flip it. I just mean like rolling on. The bike will come up in second gear, and with a bit of aggression it will come up in third gear, which basically means you can do wheelies at about well, the fastest I've had one is pretty fast, but third gear you're doing like 100 to 110 miles an hour, so that's the sort of speed, and you can get that just off the throttle. That's not using a clutch. If you clutch it, you could probably clutch it up in fourth gear. I'm going to tell you guys a little story. I never uploaded this video, not this one, I'm not talking about this current video, not this one, I'm talking way back when I went to a place called Batley, and I went to go do a test ride on a 2018 Yamaha MT09, which is the Bugs Life edition, the one with the new headlight system, the one that they've put in the fluorescent green, yellow and grey, them models. You guys know what I'm talking about. So I went to go do a test ride on one of those, and when I came back from the test ride, I didn't like it. I hated it. I really hated it. And on that model they'd solved the snatchy throttle, which I thought was just, I don't know, I just didn't like it at all. I don't know what they'd done to it, but it just felt like B mode, but all the power was just a bit delayed. I'd prefer to know where all the power is. To be honest. So that's one thing. So I was a bit bewildered by this. I was like, what? I was like, I've been wanting to ride this bike for near enough 4 years and I hate it. What's going on? I was like, how can I hate it? Everything on paper is what I should love. And then I realised I didn't hate the bike. It just wasn't my bike. Therefore, if anyone has ever done a test ride on a motorbike before, you know they make you sign on the dotted line and it says, if you bin this bike, you owe us this much money. And to be honest, I'm making no money out of my videos. I never have, I probably never will. That's not why I make videos. I make videos because I love bikes and I love sharing my enthusiasm with you all. Now, I don't fancy getting a bill of £1,000 for a bike I've binned. And I know I've given Tuonos some beans and I've given a GSXR 750 beans, but this bike has a serious reputation regarding itself. And not only that, but you can't rag this bike if it isn't yours. And I know that may sound silly. Of course you can rag it if it isn't yours, but I personally wasn't comfortable doing that. Therefore, it just felt odd. Imagine being on a bike that wants to pull really hard, but you're just not letting it, and it just feels odd. It feels like it's not being itself. And that was what I got from when I test rode an MT09. And you may be wondering to yourself, then why the hell do I have one now? And I'm going to leave this video on this final note. And the reason I have one of these now is because I trusted my gut, and my gut said, you've been looking at one of these for such a long time, that review cannot have been accurate. And as well, to add to this, I was not riding an MT09 on the roads that I'm familiar with. I was riding them on Batley roads, which were awful. They'd had that shitty gravel stuff put down that they somehow expect you to ride into the fucking ground, but it's still slippy for motorcyclists. So you can understand my apprehension to give the bike a real good test ride and a real eye-opening experience. So I just decided that video can't have been accurate. I was like, something felt off on that video, and I was like, and I still think I'd really like one. Every video I've ever watched, they look amazing, they look fun, I like how they look. This one here came up when I was just browsing bikes, as you do, and I was just like, you know what, I'm gonna get it, and if I don't like it, I'll sell it, but I just have a feeling that I'll really like it. And lo and behold, I love it. It's a great bike. In my opinion, this bike gets an 8 out of 10, which is a high score for a bike that could use a couple of little tweaks and stuff to really get it going. So this has been Tremoursphere. Thank you so much for joining in on this lovely video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.